St. Martin's Lane. St. Martin's Lane. The ghost of men come back again. St. Martin's Lane.
$2KG Network. This is the GX show for the week of May 7th. This is the first full week of May, gentlemen, and we are here with our game experience show. This is our playlist show. This is our what you've been playing, kind of our rundown. We get a assignment for the past 2 weeks. Some of us may complete it, and like so many other students, including my own, during this quarantine lockdown period of time, they say they have technical difficulties. They can't turn in their assignments on time. So there may be some of us on the show tonight that do not have their assignment complete, but that's okay. They're on the Enough to Keep Going podcast every other week. We are here with the Game Experience show with our GX show. And then in those off weeks or in those odd weeks, whichever, we are here with a deep dive of running down the news of the past week and a half. Today we had some big news. We had our Xbox Series X showcase that gave us the first glimpse of some things. We've had a number of earnings calls over the last week here. So next week we should have plenty to talk about, as we always do on the Enough to Keep Going network. But tonight I am joined by my two illustrious co-hosts. Osiris Prime, how are you tonight, sir?
I'm well. And I may or may not be the person that you were talking about earlier.
I didn't name any names, so if you're feeling any guilt,
we'll find out.
That's okay. You know, like I tell my students, it's if you're gonna acknowledge it right from the beginning, that probably allows the grader to go a little easier. So that is just fine.
But before you go on, I do have some tricks for tonight.
Ooh, some tricks. All right. Well, now I'm very excited to see what that actually means. And the other gentleman over there manning the wheels of steel, it is Agasically Stamus. How are you, sir?
So just in case it didn't come across in the recording or the live stream, because I had you on mute the first couple of minutes, rather than having you repeat it, though, this is episode number 142 of the Enough to Keep Going weekly games podcast. Tonight is our GX show. Last week we did a deep dive. Tonight we're doing GX. We're talking about the games that we've been playing for the last 2 weeks. Sorry for stepping on your intro, but just in case it didn't come across in the live stream or the recording. I'm not sure which one or the other, or both, are pieces of it. I caught you midstream, but I just wanted to make sure it was stated for posterity.
Okay, I lost all my mojo, my energy for the show.
I got some of it. I only missed the first few pieces of it.
Oh, thank you. That's really kind of you. Really appreciative. All right, anyways. So enough of my self-wallowing. There's plenty of that going on in life right now. So tonight, we are here to celebrate and enjoy what we've been playing. Well, we are at least here to celebrate and to talk about what we've been playing. Hopefully, we've been enjoying it along the way as well. So first off, as always, is our gaming assignment. So our report out this week, or the past 2 weeks, it has been about ported games that over this season, actually this whole generation, we got a lot of ports coming from one platform to another. You know, just this week we had the EA earnings call where they've been porting things. Well, actually, they just started porting things over to the Switch with the game of Burnout Paradise. remastered. But throughout this generation, we've got plenty of ports that have come on and off of Game Pass and Xbox Live. And in April, we had the Uncharted ports on PS Plus. So lots of potential ports to talk about from one platform to another. But actually, tonight, we're going to be talking about moving them from one system to another, not just from one generation to another, but we're going to be talking about moving from one platform to another, whether that's from console to PC or Xbox to PlayStation. So, and actually, it turns out that both of the report outs here are not only about Xbox and PC ports and back and forth, but also they are within the Halo franchise. So, Agasicles, yours is Halo Wars Definitive Edition. So, is this something you started playing on Xbox and then tried it out on Game Pass on PC? Or is this something that you picked up on PC and went back to Xbox to see how it works with controller support?
Yeah, before I talk about that, I'll just talk a little bit about, one of the notes you brought up was you talked about the different kinds of ports. And as we started to see the news drop yesterday about the rumors roll in that there was possibly a Mass Effect trilogy, initially reported as potentially a remake. I think today we saw that it's really just a remaster. So there's lots of different flavors of this. There's remasters, there's remakes. Those things to me are different. My blog post earlier today was a lot about which ones I've actually paid for and played and which ones I have not. I've never really played, other than Resident Evil 2 last year and remastered. I don't think, as far as I can tell, I've never actually played a remake. So it'll be interesting to hear the conversation kick around tonight to see who played what and what is the pedigree of those things that they replayed. For me, Halo Definitive Edition is a port. It jumped platforms from. Well, I shouldn't say that. This is really convoluted. It depends on how you think about it. And today, things get released multi-platform. They get released for everything on relatively day and date. It's not like back in the day when things were released, on one platform, and then 6 months to a year later they were released on another platform. And we think about those a little differently. And there's always the notion of like how a UI, especially for like this type of game, for an RTS, was designed for a console, and then was released on the PC. This is initially simply a thing that was a multi-platform release back in 2000. See if I have the history correct. Back in 2009, on the Xbox 360. But later there was a thing called the Definitive Edition released on, I think, both at least definitely on PC. I can't remember if it was released on Xbox One or not. I think maybe was it the Definitive Edition also released on Xbox One?
I think it was, yes, on Xbox One. It did come back out this generation.
Yeah. So when it was originally released, it's just a multi-platform release, like every other game today is. When you think about it, then I think about re-releases, which is the same game just released on another platform. But here you have a thing noted as the Definitive Edition, which usually means that it incorporates all the DLC. But in this case, I believe there are some additional tweaks that were in the game as well. Not necessarily with the gameplay, but certain graphical things put in. It was more than just a 4K assets and a makeover. So it was very slightly nuanced. So you have that. What I found really interesting about this game is the history. This is the Ensemble Studios guys, who are the Age of Empires guys, who were initially created, I think, in 1994, and then were purchased as a first-party studio by Microsoft in 2001. So they released this game, and actually the game initially came out like a month or two after they were disbanded. So a number of expatriates went to another studio called Robotics Studios or something of that nature, and they're actually the guys who maintained the game and did the DLC for the next several years. In 2016, as I mentioned, the game was released as the Definitive Edition on PC and Xbox One. And then in 2017, and it was done simply because Halo Wars 2 was coming out. Halo Wars 2 was actually done by 343 Studios, who obviously took over the Halo franchise from Bungie after they left. But guess who assisted them? The guys from Creative Labs, who are the Total War guys. So it's a really interesting, DNA behind this game. I played it. I had never actually played it on Xbox One. One of the things or on 360. One of the things this game was supposed to do was it was supposed to be the solution to the dreaded curse that RTSs did not play well on consoles. I'm not sure if you remember, but basically you really didn't have real turn-based or RTS games on consoles. And whenever you did, they were absolutely horrible in generations 5 and 6. I think maybe there were some attempts in Generation 6. In Generation 7, we really tried to flip that around, and strategy games becoming a thing really became a thing during that generation. I think there was a Risk game that was done for Generation 7, as well as some other things. But this game specifically was supposed to solve the dreaded RTS curse. When you play it today on PC, and I only played it for about an hour, I was planning on playing it more. I played through the first couple of missions. You can tell that this is a game designed for consoles. Like, the field of view on the battlefield is very small and very tight. Scrolling around the edges of the screen, and I played it on a 4K screen, even though I had it dumbed down to 1440p. There were different points on the screen where I would put the cursor where it would hitch and it like wouldn't move, and I would like slide it up or down or over or left or right an inch, and then it would pick up and start moving. A lot of the controls that we become accustomed to, you guys have heard me comment how, like, eventually, particularly for shooters, I wish there would just be a spec. Like, there would just be a thing that came out and said, all shooters must conform to this. There are a lot of paradigms that we get used to on RTSs that you would think would be the norm. So you multi-select a bunch of units and you hit control and a numeral key in an effort to assign them to a group or a subgroup. That does not work. You left click somewhere else on the map, so you cursor over. Well, you go to the mini map, you left click on a part of the map, you expect to just snap to that from your cursor and your camera port view. That doesn't work. So there are lots of norms and things that you become accustomed to that don't work. For the Halo faithful, and I know that there are people who are deep into this lore, kind of like we are with Destiny 2. And thanks a lot, Portera. I see you over there in the chat. We appreciate you showing up and coming through the live stream. This game is there, and I think it fills that hole and that purpose, right? It's another piece in the menagerie of Halo lore that if you're a deep Halo nerd, like, you really kind of ought to play or have to play. But if you're like an RTS aficionado and you're coming at this game and you encounter it, it just feels disruptive. Like, if you're not coming to it specifically to try and figure out like a missing piece of the Halo, like scrolling in and out, Squadron Supreme goes from a very tight planet side view, like all the way out into like suborbital view. This game does not do that. Again, you can tell that the controls are made for a console.
I found that interesting to hear you talk about, because I haven't played Halo Wars 1, but 2 years ago, maybe 3 years now, but probably 2 years, I picked up Halo Wars 2, and hearing some of those same types of pieces, that they do seem to have fixed some of that in Halo Wars 2. Halo Wars 2 did launch simultaneously on PC and Xbox, but at the same time, I completely agree with you in terms of the just the scale, the tightness of the camera, the way that it is designed for. I did play a little bit of both on Xbox and on PC, and it definitely it feels designed for a console, but it also feels so much more fluid and easier to navigate on a PC as well. So let's stick on the Halo lore and the Halo ports. And so I dove into the Master Chief Collection. So again, this is 343's Halo Master Chief Collection, which launched back in 2014 for the Xbox. And then has been, came with a plethora of of press around the matchmaking and all the other online pieces, but it then added ODST, the campaign, and then last year added in Reach as well. And this past winter in December of 19, Reach launched on PC, both on Steam and on the Xbox storefront, or the Xbox Game Pass storefront. And now Master Chief Collection has launched a couple of months ago. And just this week, they said that Halo 2 is coming out on May 19th, I want to say, that it's coming out in another week or two for the PC as well. So I wanted to dive back in and play a little bit of Master Chief Collection on PC, at least Reach and the Halo 1 anniversary, CE anniversary. I played both recently on Xbox, hooked up to my Xbox One X, hooked up to a 4K TV because I kind of re-downloaded it. I purchased the game back when it came out. Always have enjoyed the Halo lore. Never been a big multiplayer person, but I've enjoyed the lore of Halo. And looking back on it this past earlier in 2020 on a 4K TV, they've done a lot of work with the assets. It looks great in 4K. So then I was very curious to see how it looked and controlled on the PC. And Reach looks great. Reach looks really good. Halo 1 on the PC looks like, even in the anniversary collection, it still looks, you can tell that these are the flat polygons of what, 2001, 2002 era Halo. It still plays great, still is really fun. There's still that, escaping the ship and getting down to the planet for the first time. And Bungie has always done great skyboxes, as we, as you just said, Agasicles, we're fans of Destiny. Certainly, Bungie has a legacy of great skyboxes and setting. Halo 1, Halo CE, Combat Evolved is a fun one for me to go back to because actually I played it first on PC. I played it on the Gearbox port for PC for Windows, and so coming back to it on PC after playing some of it on Xbox with a controller feels so much more like, for me it feels so much more normal because that's how I first experienced Halo. Was not with a Duke controller and moving around, but it was on keyboard and mouse, and so coming back to it feels so much more fluid. Being able to
let me
go ahead.
Let me ask you. So, I mean, part of this is there's a little bit of nostalgia in this, and a part of this was like the technical piece of picking out a port from a nostalgia perspective, because that's a lot about what the blog post I wrote had to do with. It's about how remakes really kind of only exist for one purpose, and that's to allow you that walk down memory lane. Like, they're really just not technically well regarded throughout the development community, right? Which is, what I drew on as reference was, look at Resident Evil 2 remake and the fact that it was snubbed in its entirety last year. I went back and looked at the stats, and like, it was nominated in 23 categories. It won 7. Like, 5 of them are like for audio. So, it was effectively, like, amongst its own peers, did not play well. And the reason I walk up to that is, where does Halo sit for you? Because for me, that first game, it is so significant because it is the first really good implementation of a first-person shooter on a console. Like, playing that game for the first time on a big screen TV with a Duke controller, like, and going, holy cow, this actually works. Like, and in the meantime, I was playing, like, I think the most recent PlayStation thing I was playing was, like, I think the Medal of Honor thing that was on PlayStation 2 was bad, right? So, like, does the first Halo break out for you at all with any, like, nostalgic significance?
Academically, yes. Like, I recognize what it meant for the industry, what it meant for the genre. Going back and playing it now on PC, it feels comfortable because I can put myself back a few houses ago, my kids are so much smaller, I'm in a different spot in my life. Yeah, there's some of that nostalgia. Playing it as looking at it amongst its peers as a first person shooter, it's incredibly limited. It doesn't necessarily hold up in that capacity. That if I was trying to play it for the gameplay, no, it doesn't really hold up. It is going back and experiencing it, thinking about how Cortana is portrayed, how they introduce Cortana, that the dialogue back and forth, how they bring in those characters, how you start to, and in some ways playing it now after understanding the Halo lore and all the kind of, you know, the battle for reaches and the graphic novels and the stories and the motion comics and all the other pieces that have happened at this point, seeing how they introduced Master Chief feels like it is such a straightforward kind of sci-fi action movie compared to what it ends up being in the lore. Like understanding where Master Chief comes from and the aspect of how he got into cyber stasis and hypersleep or whatever it's called, right? Like all those pieces as going back and picking out a middle chapter of a much larger saga is interesting from a narrative perspective. From a gameplay perspective, yeah, sure, I can see what it is. Actually, playing Reach on the PC, because it never came to PC before, Reach feels a whole lot more fluid, a whole lot more recent. There is a sprint button, even if it has a stamina. There's a lot more nuance and modernity to Reach, and in some ways, as a Destiny player from launch, I really see the connective tissue from how they got from Reach to original Destiny. So in that way, Reach holds up in a lot of capacities because of it being a little closer. I also recently played Halo 4 on Xbox One X because it just again see what it looks like in 4K. By the way, beautiful. But even then, it gives me another comparison point of Halo 1. So yes, if I'm not looking at it as a piece of, it's like going back and looking at a classic movie. You appreciate what it's doing with the camera and the cinematography and maybe some of the storytelling beats, but at the same time, as a piece of entertainment, it is a product of its time. Does that answer your question there, Gasicles?
It most certainly does. You get an A, sir.
Oh, excellent.
Well said.
So, moving on to someone who does not get an A is Osiris Prime. I don't believe that you've finished this assignment. Do you have any incomplete work to turn in?
I don't, but to transition us into the next section, I did play Master Chief Collection also.
Excellent. This is
past week.
why I kicked it over to you. So
yeah, so I played the other side. I did play the multiplayer. I was actually playing with my family. Actually, a few days ago, we just played it again. I think we played a little bit last month. I believe it was for the first time.
Do you guys play custom matches, or do you play matchmaking with others then as well?
No, we just do custom matches. So it's just the three of us. So we just do like the.
That's fun. That's great.
Slayer. Yeah. So just every man for himself, woman, as it were. So we did a few maps. We did one of the larger maps with the vehicles, which it's not good. 3 people, this is way too large. Even with those old ore maps, it's still too big. But I mean, we were able to find each other. I mean, they're big, but it's not, there's not a lot of detail and stuff going on in some of those maps. So it's not too bad. And then, we did a couple smaller matches, and then I was just playing with my son too at one point. And so it was fun. I mean, it's something I didn't think we'd all get into, but I mean, it is one of those games that we can all just jump into and play. I want to try to do co-op at some point and just kind of go through all the games and do it like that. I know the first 2 you can only do, I think, two player co-op, and then I think after that it's you can do up to 4, I believe. So we just got to get past those first 2 games. But yeah, and and just like you were talking about the nostalgia thing, I first played, Halo 1, the first Halo CE back when it came out, but I didn't have a Xbox back then, the original Xbox, so I just played it at a friend's house the whole time, and that's pretty much the game that got me into the Xbox in the first place. So once I played that, once the 360 rolled around, I was like, oh, you know what? I know there's another Halo coming out. I think I played maybe a few other games, but it was mostly just Halo that we used to play on the Xbox. So that kind of got me into the whole Xbox family, and been pretty much Xbox since then. So it kind of plays off all that and the ports and stuff. So it kind of came around. But hopefully we can get going and get through the story and all that too at some point. But we're having fun, just
That's
slayering each
great.
other.
Yeah, that was one of my early memories playing first-person shooters with my kids was doing exactly that. Was throwing into a custom match, the three of us into a Halo multiplayer, and just kind of blowing each other up and running each other over, and seeing my kids explore in a 3D, moving from a Nintendo 2D focus into a 3D world was kind of fun. So,
Although
and
I still
actually,
go ahead.
go ahead.
I was gonna say I still hate the vehicles. I hate the controls for the vehicles. It's terrible. Using the stick to accelerate is just the most horrible thing. I don't know what they're thinking when they thought that one up, but
Well, that's okay. Using it on a keyboard and mouse, it doesn't make it any better either. So
at least it's a button you can press, I'm assuming.
But the weird thing with those vehicles is they are like the worst driving vehicles that I love to play. Like, as opposed to like like Grand Theft Auto. Like, every time I'm in Grand Theft Auto, I'm just like, this is horrible, like, manning these vehicles. But, like, I always enjoy when I'm like, there's a Warthog, right? And jumping into it and playing along. So, I don't know. It's weird.
I think the smaller Covenant one, I forgot what it's called now. Is it the Ghost or something like that?
I can't remember.
Banshee.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it might be the Banshee. That one's fun.
Okay.
That one's cool. That one controls pretty well. Yeah, I mean, even you're still using the stick, but I mean, the other ones just seem like, especially with the Warthog, it's like slippery. Like you're always sliding around, and I don't know. It's just weird.
Well, one of the things that's weird, and maybe this is something to pick at a little bit more on another time, is they are, again, I'm drawing the comparison to Grand Theft Auto. When you're in Grand Theft Auto, it just feels bad. Like they didn't put enough compute on like the physics model, and that like wasn't just their emphasis, right? It's just a means of conveyance. Like it feels like it's derped. Right, intention. I don't know if intentionally is the right word, but it feels broken. Whereas in Halo, they just feel unique, right? Maybe they're not good, but it feels like however they are is very intentional.
Yeah, there's a little like headcanon aspect there of whatever the design legacy of the Warthog vehicles ended up being within the Halo universe, of how they got the kind of independent axles and all the other pieces that end up being part of the jank. But they lean into that and they continue with it. So, Osiris, that's a great. You're leading us off on what we've been playing with some family games is actually something we're going to come back to at the end of the show. So thank you for doing that. That's going to be great. But let's stick with Xbox Game Pass. And I guess, Cleese, you've been playing another game from Game Pass, a little more recent than Master Chief Collection, but also something that is a follow-up and a sequel within the family of Xbox. So you've been playing the new Ori game, correct?
Yes, and just before I move on, Portero mentions in the chat that he also plans on, hearing you guys talk about it, plans on picking up the Halo games because he wants to play them all, mostly for the nostalgia. And don't accuse me of playing this game on Xbox Game Pass, because it is on Xbox Game Pass, but I did not play it that way. This would have been my procurement for, I think, last month is one of my 2 new video game days. So I did actually pay the developers for this, for all their hard work. I had a good time with Ori and Will of the Wisps. I am not a big Metroidvania kind of player. It actually surprised me that it was a Metroidvania design. I don't know. I guess there's a question about whether or not they're really making anything else when it comes to platformers. But I really appreciated, very much loved, the fact that there's a hard kill aspect to playing Ori, that it's not all just jumping around and running away from things. I was really pleasantly surprised at this whole game. I expected it to be a little more, Crash Bandicoot wrapped in a, slightly prodigious, overly emotional wrapping, meant to tug at the heartstrings, a little, ootsy cutesy kind of thing, and it actually there's a lot of of Ori being a bad behind, right, in his world, and that's appreciated. This development team probably does one of the best jobs, I would almost argue, of set pieces. Probably the most one of the most exciting set pieces I've been through in the game is there is a point where you're running away from something, and it is not a straight run. It is there's a lot of obstacles, environmental stuff in the way, and it is very much like and I can't remember the other game that we've talked about on the show that is very much in this vein, but it's very much like a Mirror's Edge kind of game at that point. But also throughout the game, where like when you're hitting everything, I mean, it is one of the most beautiful and invigorating experiences you've ever played. Like I link that feeling like a superhero to killing things and beating things down, but this one just in its fluidity of movement and everything that's accomplished in an entirely 2D plane environment. Is simply amazing. I mean, the best set piece that I've been exposed to in definitely like the last year or so. So, really amazing. Playing it on Xbox One was comfort food because it allowed me to get back to the console when I haven't been giving it that much attention. I played this on one of the newer panels that I have in here, which is a 24-inch, 144 hertz panel. I'm not sure how fast it was, but there has been... This is the interesting thing that we'll have to talk about at some point, too. There's a lot of things that are being advertised for the Xbox Series X that, if you really get deep into the notes on the Xbox One, are actually already being programmed in the Xbox One. So one of the things is that there's some level of automated discovery in the display that you're connected to in the Xbox One operating system now, because it indicated to me that like your display can perform faster than 60 hertz or whatever. Would you like us to automatically tune it to that? And it did. I don't know what it settled down at, but it settled at something greater than the 60 hertz. So it looked great, as you guys who played Ori and the Blind Forest, which I did not do, told me. And that's maybe the last thing I'll say is you were definitely handicapped if you didn't play Ori and the Blind Forest. If you're coming into Will-O-the-Wisp cold and you don't know like the paradigm and how things kind of work in the world, there's a lot of pain involved. But the ramp from like straight stick Ori that you are at the very beginning of the game to where you are, I probably put it about 15 hours into it. I've seen another streamer complete it in 18. That was a person who had played the Blind Forest, so I don't know if I was close or closing in on the end. I was definitely in like the latter fourth, like 25-30% of the game, latter third. But at that point, I kind of wanted to get back to Destiny 2 on the Xbox One, so I held up there.
No, I played probably only maybe 2 hours of this game, but I agree with you in terms of not only its beauty, which is absolutely true, but that sense of flow that it brings. Like there's a rhythm and a fluidity and that some of the best platformers do, right? Regardless if this is a Metroidvania or if it's any type of platformer, that there's a flow that this game brings and an artistry to it. So I'm glad that you dove into it. This doesn't always seem like something in your wheelhouse, so it's fun to hear you talk about it.
So, and I'm sorry, I had to jump out for a second there at the beginning, but as far as like the controls, now you mentioned like the flow and everything, are the controls spot on? Like, is it kind of floaty when you're moving around? Is it stiff? I mean, like, how are the controls?
I would say the controls are pretty good. I don't know if I'd call it a design problem, because I'm sure it's great for some players. One of the things with this game is I usually cite it as an advantage when a game gives you like a lot of tools to take things apart, right? like just fully kitting you out as a bad behind in whatever world you're in. Like, I'm sure in similar ways maybe to Crackdown, right, where you walk into a situation or when you add the environment onto what's in your kit, when you think of like a Far Cry 5 or a Just Cause, like you roll up on an enemy base and you have 59 different things that you can think of in order to take that base down. and it never ends the way you start it. Right? But the thing with Ori is it starts to get into that territory where they give you too much. But I will say, what it backs away from in Doom, in what Doom Eternal did. So, and I don't know if this was a player error, but in Doom Eternal, when you get the double dash, as far as I could tell, you couldn't turn it off. So there was no more a way to regular jump once you got the double dash, right? That was always there. And often there were obstacles and things in your way where, like, that wouldn't have been my preference. Like, I would have rather done a regular jump, right? Ori, at least you retain all of your original abilities. So when you get the double dash, like, it's not the only thing. But it does a little too much where there is the element, again, like Doom Eternal, where, not as bad, but sometimes you're taking jumps and you have to, like, change direction in midair. And sometimes the way the map is, you can't tell where you need to wind up when you first come into a level. Like, the secret of, like, where you need to end up is off the screen. So it forces you into a situation where, like, the first death kind of is inevitable because there's no way, right? The statistical chance that you're going to get it right the first time is almost zero. Ori does a better job in terms of that. That typically only happens when, like, where you're going to end up is somewhere below you, and it makes sense that it's off screen. But like Doom Eternal, it's like around a corner like that. Like, it's a little more annoying and frustrating. So controls are tight. There's a little too much sometimes with the way that you're going to handle a problem, particularly when you get a lot of powers and it's things in midair. Like, you don't know, should I grapple? Should I double dash? Right? Should I strike up? A weird thing in this game is that, and I don't know if it's intentional, but when you sword strike in a given direction, it actually slightly extends the distance of your jump. So you can traverse vertically by, like, jumping over and then striking up. Unfortunately, what I didn't know is sometimes that's not what you're like, that's not how you're supposed to get through an obstacle. So I was like, oh, you're supposed to, like, strike and, like, get a few extra inches. No, you're not. So, I wound up spending a lot of time, like, trudging through that part of it.
Nice. Yeah, that's great to hear that. I mean, we had talked about it a couple of months ago, almost, when it first came out, but never really dove into it. So you're the one, I guess, because I really has spent the most time with it. So thanks for sharing. I have played another game on Xbox Game Pass. This is released last week. So this is Streets of Rage 4. I actually played it just like you, Osiris Prime. I played it with some family, sat down on the couch, did a little bit of co-op, as all good, side brawlers should be. It's interesting to hear other people talk about it on games media and different reviews and online, that some people really love it. Some people are kind of disappointed by it. I initially and really was just awed by it. It's a beautiful looking game. The art style is nice. The music is fine. I enjoyed Streets of Rage 1, Streets of Rage 2. Both were games that I rented when I rented a Genesis and could finish them in the same weekend that I rented a Genesis. So it wasn't, I have some nostalgia for it, speaking of nostalgia, but not like, oh, I remember this lick of this tune, and oh, this is Axel and Blaze, and oh yeah, I mean, I remember those people and I kind of get that piece, and the narrative here is interesting in terms of it does kind of continue within that same city and those same characters, but adds in some other, some other characters. And actually, the other characters are pretty interesting in terms of what they bring to kind of the standard brawler makeup. But it's fun. I mean, it is my ultimate, after a weekend of play, my ultimate review on it at this point is it's exactly what it's what I would want out of a brawler. That a brawler was never something. It was either something that you just devoured quickly and returned back in the 80s and 90s because you finished it really quickly, or it was something where you put a few quarters in when you had them at the arcade, and you came back the next week when you had some more quarters and you plucked away at it a little bit more, and you got used to knowing exactly where things were within those first early levels because you spent a lot of quarters there. And this feels genuine to that. Like, I mean, there are some things here that I design-wise, I'm not a big fan of. That so you get to some enemies where they have a block move, but you as a character or any of the characters don't have a block move, so you're kind of handicapped in that. Like they can block your attack, but you don't have a way to counter that. But at the same time, there's some good air juggling that can go on in terms of a combo system. We ended up actually getting one of the early bosses kind of stuck in a juggle cycle and could take them out relatively quickly, which is kind of fun, right? To abuse the system and cheese it a little bit in true brawler fashion. But there's a nice risk reward with you have your Y button does a kind of a heavy attack, a super attack, which eats a little bit of health. But if you can combo afterward, you can regain that health, and depending on how long you combo, you regain more of that health. And so there's the ability to kind of understand the system and play with it a little bit. It is nice. Foolishly, we turned on team damage, like that we could punch each other. So initially, that was how we started the game, which two teenage boys and their father sitting on a couch together. There were a lot of a lot of disgruntled feelings going on as we were punching each other in the same time of trying to make a combo go, or getting in the way of somebody else's attack. And then once we turn that off, it flows really well. It feels like we should be sitting around an arcade stick. It is, you go into a brawler not thinking you're going to dive into this most complicated fighting pattern, but there's some nuance here. There's some reason to kind of explore the different characters. It sounds like there's a lot more characters to unlock in terms of some of the 8-bit or the 16-bit characters. We got we got the dad, we got the original other character. So there's some pieces here, but overall, it was a really fun time. It scratches that brawler itch. It is not something that I've been able to sit down in for long stretches of time. But at the same time, unless I was dropping $10 at an arcade machine trying to finish a brawler, most of the time, I put a dollar or two in, play for a while, and move on to something else. And this feels exactly in that same vein.
So does this? I mean, what? We talked earlier in the show about DNA and pedigrees of like, what is a re-release, what is a port, what is a remake, what is this exactly?
It is a brand new game. It is a numbered sequel within the Streets of Rage. It is not a remaster of any one of them. It is a continuation of kind of the genre, the legacy, even the narrative of the original Streets of Rage. So you have the original three characters who come in and out of the story in different ways. Two of them are playable from the beginning. You can unlock one of the others as you go through. So yeah, it's a brand new game. Kind of, it's a continuation within this franchise.
Huh, I didn't realize that. And so I know, again, going back to the earlier comment, I know this is comfort food, right? It does a certain thing. It stays within that envelope. Or I guess that's a question. Does it stay within that envelope? Does this game... So a huge struggle that I'm going through now, and, try not to refer to the health crisis too much on this show, but it's a thing. This was already going to be kind of a design-starved year in terms of games that really, move the art and the design forward. I'm struggling now to make choices, right, when I come up on new video game days. Most recently, one of the things that I had to make, interesting, because it wasn't due to the paucity of games, it was due to too many, but I elected to go with Metro 2033 Redux on the Nintendo Switch, because I really want to support third-party titles of good games continuing to come to the Switch. My other options, Streets of Rage 2 was one of them, but I was also looking at Gear Tactics and Panzer Commander 2. I think it's called Panzer Commander 2, which was really more so what I really wanted to play. But so we talked earlier about Resident Evil 2. One of the things we try and do on this show is, between the four of us, we're trying to we're trying to have fun, but we're also kind of taking a look at what everybody else has played and trying to make sure that we, by the end of the year, that we have really played, like, a healthy amount of the number of titles that are industrially significant is kind of what I'm referring to them as now. Is Streets of Rage 2 at the end of the year, and every title that we play doesn't have to be, is Streets of Rage 2 at the end of the year something that moves the art forward, that is significant on the landscape, is anything more than a nostalgia play?
Oh, I would say at the end of the year, it is not something that comes back into our superlative show. It is not something that's going to end up on somebody's, best fighting game, because it's not a fighting game. It's a brawler. I think what it does, and it does nicely, is takes a look at a genre from multiple generations ago and says, what does that look like in a current generation? Not only what does that look like just, fancy graphic wise, but what does that look like in terms of, adding in the combo system? How do you make this a little more nuanced, somebody that's used to a little more of a fighting game aspect, that's not simply just a button mashing, kind of cheesing its way through, leaning to the right and hitting the first thing that hits on the screen. So I think in that way, it is successful in reimagining a genre that has struggled to figure out if it has any relevancy outside of the 16-bit era. So that I would say it's successful. This week there was a bunch of other beat 'em up and brawlers that have come out. The Kevin Smith came out with a demake on the Switch in terms of kind of a Mallrats Nintendo SNES style brawler. With some, so it's something that people continue to go back to because of the nostalgia aspect. But I think Streets of Rage, from at least my experience so far in it, is that it is simply not just trying to hit the beats of what our minds remember, but it's trying to do something more with those beats and move the instrumental forward a little bit. So let's move on. We've got plenty of stuff to talk about. We're already way through this show, so I'm going to jump around here and keep the flow going. Gascally, since you were on the mic, you have been playing World of Warships. So I know that you and Swissguard had been talking about it in our Discord, and since he's not on the show tonight, I wanted to throw that back over to you and give you a chance to talk about World of Warships a little bit.
Yeah, I do want to pause for like 10 or 15 seconds and let Prime ask his question. I think he was spooling up to something.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna ask. So you're saying how there's a variety of characters at the at the onset, and then you can unlock characters. Do the characters feel different as far as gameplay, or is it just pretty much you punch and you kick and that's it? You can pick up a weapon or whatever.
No, they feel. I mean, so you get 4 to start with. I think 4. I have to go back and see. But yeah, I think you get 4 to start with. You get Blaze and Axel, 2 of the original characters, male and female, who pretty much kind of play like what you remember, right? They got some punches, they got some kicks. One's more leg heavy, one's more fist heavy. But then you have Cherry, who is actually the daughter of one of the other characters. And she's got a guitar. She does a couple overhead smashes, so you can kind of move around the screen, jump around the screen a little bit more. And then there's somebody that's got some type of cybernetic arms, kind of a bigger brawler, a little slower, but he's got a longer reach. And so we played actually all of those characters. And so, playing the 2 original characters feels pretty much like you remember. But then playing the other characters with either the speed and the range end up kind of they create some different opportunities. They make the game feel a little bit different than just kind of a Final Fight clone that it originally was. Good question. Thanks. All right.
Yeah, no, that's good. World of Warships. Progression. One of the things this is another game that got into my veins and caused me to do that soul searching and navel gazing that I am so often to do, and made me think once again: do I stop with the trying to play all the different games that come out throughout the year, or do I just play like 5 to 8 games that have these, what I refer to now as these persistent progression models, and just focus on that? Because World of Warships is a game that hits home. I did elements of this in my younger life, and Man, I would play this game all the time, right? Like, I would just, I worry, I guess at a certain point I would become bored, but again, if I were just into persistent progression games, then I would flip, and go play Destiny 2 or Overwatch or something. So, it does a really good job. It does an effective job of, although at a certain point it becomes a grind, and it is really about, like, you just gotta play tons of matches and, like, inch towards, getting new ships and stuff. Every piece of its progression model I like. Now, I hear that at levels like 9 and 10, there's a lot of chicanery and, like, forcing you into paying for stuff to really, but I'm like, okay, but like, I have 8 levels before I get there, right? So, like, there's just hundreds of hours of gameplay to be involved in up until then, and every time you're getting out on a map and playing a nautical battle, like, in, like, even if there weren't a progression model, that's got to be fun. What it reminds me of is I really need to get back to Dreadnought and play that on PC. It is virtually dead on PlayStation. The last time that I checked in on it, I believe that it still has a decently healthy community on the PC. I also want to get around to checking out Star Trek Online at some point, because I think there's some healthy starship combat there as well. But loads of fun. And although there's questionable things from players in there, like people driving in front of your torpedoes and things like that, there's not... What I haven't experienced yet is I haven't experienced the Rainbow Six Vegas effect, right? Where, like, here's a tactical game that should be played kind of slowly and methodically, and people should stack up before they enter a room. Instead, what you run into is every time you play with a player, they're playing it like Call of Duty, and they're just banging through stuff and making a ton of noise, and it's all about your kill ratio. I haven't really run into that. There are definitely some specific tactics and things that you get exposed to that, like, it makes it unhealthy and unwise to be off by yourself. Despite that, like, nobody talks in chat, and that's another frustrating thing. For a game to be on PC and there to be, like, nobody talking in the game voice channels, like, that game begs for collaboration and tactical coordination, and, like, no one is talking. So, it's amazing that a game ekes that much fun out of your time spent in it, despite the fact that nobody's talking. And there's not this, like, unspoken Destiny effect like there often is, where people are just work collaboratively together, despite the fact that they're not talking, and there's this, like, body language thing and emote kind of language to bank on. But it's still tons of fun. It's one of the games that's in the top of my persistent progression games that I'm going to keep coming back to.
Nice. Well, I'm going to stick with the tons of fun aspect and also lean into your Rainbow Six reference there, because I've been playing a little bit, not nearly as much as I wanted to yet, but playing some XCOM Chimera Squad. It launched at the end of April. It was $10 for the first, in the pre-order in the first week of launch. A lot of fun. Smaller game, not as big as the XCOMs, and truthfully, I didn't get into either XCOM 1 or 2 as much as I had hoped to. This actually may get me back into them, but this is a much more confined game in terms of scale. It is not a world conquering or defending. You are kind of policing a city. You are a tactics squad. And so the Rainbow Six reference there is actually really, really apt, because a lot of this is about, you're coming into a situation. You've got to breach. You've got to get into a confined room or rooms, and figure out kind of who you're going to place in what area, what skills they have in terms of. And the fun part about Chimera Squad is you're both humans and augmented humans and aliens all kind of together in one piece. So you get some aliens with some fun aspects of the. It's almost. I've heard people reference this, and there's some accuracy to there, right? There's some Mass Effect like skills here. You've got a telekinesis piece of being able to lift people up. You've got the Cobra Snake Lady who can kind of sneak around and stealth a little bit and do some non-lethal kills. There are some other aspects here, but the breaching aspect really brings me back to early 2000s playing Rainbow Six. the original Rainbow Six on PC in terms of setting up where you're gonna breach, how you're gonna make those charges, who's gonna come in, and one of the difference here is the play order is that in XCOM 1 and 2, you take all your turns and then the next side takes all their turns. It's on it's in that Fire Emblem, it's in that, kind of everybody goes and then the other team goes and then you go back and forth. Here it feels more in the almost like a JRPG aspect of, real-time battle of I've got some characters who are going to go first. It's all about kind of aggression and speed. So you can see who's going to get the first shots off, but then that the enemy's going to get 2 shots in a row before you get another shot. And so you've got to figure out, okay, well, how am I going to neutralize one of those 2 shots in order to reduce my damage? And so there's a different layer of strategy that ends up coming into play here because of how that turn order ends up working. And so that's actually been a lot of fun of playing off of that, of figuring out how to use those skills. And it also, the kind of narrative here, going back to our narrative discussions of before, it's not very serious. It is a little over the top in terms of, policing rah-rah, but it also kind of leans into this 80s, 90s kind of buddy cop aspect. There's some humor that goes on here. So it's been enjoyable. It's been a lot lighter of an XCOM game when the fate of the world is not in your hands. But it's been fun to kind of have that kind of one-off aspect. And again, for $10, it's been a really fun play. Actually, I had hoped to both get into XCOM and to Gears Tactics, but I spent more time in XCOM and decided to kind of commit my headspace to that before trying to juggle 2 different tactic games at once.
So are all the other elements that were in XCOM in this game? Like, is there base building in here as well?
So you still get your research elements in terms of kind of your upgrade elements, but there's not the same level of upgradability of kind of research, and you're building up your base and building up all these other pieces. You're not launching satellites in. Again, it's very contained. There are some kind of meta game aspects to it where you've got your city map, and within that city map there are different zones that have kind of unrest, and so you're kind of going in and doing insertions within them. If you leave one for too long, it'll boil over and you have to deal with some of that. So there is a little bit of that kind of larger kind of management piece, but not nearly to the same effect of the other, the mainline XCOMs. And the fact that you only have named characters who have a defined class here makes it also very different, right? This is not, I lost my sniper, so now I'm just going to recruit another sniper and give it a different name and build that back up. That you have a limited pool of people that all have unique traits. The difference here is that there's not, at least I haven't found it, maybe because I'm playing on normal difficulty, but there's not kind of the permadeath aspect to this either. So people can die for the mission, but they'll be healed during, the off, you bring them back to base and they'll get healed back up. So it's XCOM light in some of those ways. Like, you're not diving in nearly as deep into some of those systems. So it's leaning more into kind of the smaller tactical battles than into this kind of larger grand strategy aspect. Osiris, we have been talking for too long without you, so why don't you take a couple games here? You've got some regular ones on your playlist that please go ahead and hit and give us some updates on where you're at with both some of your Xbox play and Switch play.
All right, I'm going to start off real quick with Call of Duty Warzone. Still playing this, still enjoying it, still love the game. I know they have, I think it was within the last week, maybe 2 weeks, they had the news, or they were talking with one of the developers or one of the game designers, that they're going to start doing kind of like world changing events, kind of like they do in Fortnite. And it's going to be kind of interesting if they do that, because it's going to be like, how are they going to do that? Like, are they just going to nuke part of the map, or like, what are they going to do? So it's going to be interesting to see that kind of forward looking ahead. But just playing the main game, I'm still enjoying it. I still have a lot of fun with it. A lot different from Black Ops 4's battle royale game, Blackout. Like I think I mentioned that I think last time on the last GX show, but you really have to. This is really more of a squad game. If you, really, well, I think they have solo too, but I mean, if you're playing squads, or I like to play trios a lot. Actually, now they've added that game mode in there. I think that's a good middle ground from just being a 2-man squad, or sometimes that takes a while to do, and I don't know if they have that mode yet here on Warzone. They just have regular squad, 4-man squad, but 3 is a good number, I think, to kind of go through. Even if you lose like a man or even 2 people, you can kind of feel like maybe you can kind of take out 3 people by yourself. So you got a lot of gadgets and stuff like that, but too just even just with the gunplay, it works. So I'm really enjoying that. Animal Crossing, paid off my house. I don't know if I mentioned that last time, so I'm pretty much done with Nook. He can go jump off a cliff for all I care, Mr. Tom Nook. So now I'm just shaping my world because I did get the terraformer finally. I can do that. I can dig trenches and build hills or whatever, or cliffs, I should say, not hills, cliffs where I want to. So I'm starting to do that. Game I want to talk about though is Hellblade, which I just got back into again this past weekend. I really like this game. I think this is going to be probably my one game I finished this year because I don't finish a lot of games normally. I think the only game I finished last year was Mortal Kombat 11. So I mean, that probably tells you something right there. But this game, I'm really enjoying this game. It's once again kind of like with Call of Duty. It's the sound in this game because you always have these voices talking to you. Pretty much all the time. You have all these real crazy visions and stuff like that. It's just I think it's the story that's kind of keeping me there. Gameplay wise, like the fighting is, I mean, it's pretty basic for the most part. I haven't really seen any different from the very first fight I did up until this big beast thing that I had just fought, which I thought was the end. And it seems a lot of times where I think it's the end of this game, and it's just like, oh hey, you gotta now you gotta go into this part of the world. It's like, all right, but I'm enjoying it though while it's doing that.
So talk to me a little bit about does this game have a progression model in it? Do you gain new skills, and does that change the way a fight unfolds at all, or is it like you said, where like it's just you get a heavy attack and a light attack, and that's the way that it is all the way through?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. You do get like a kind of a bullet time-ish kind of a ability at one point, like halfway in or so. Maybe even you might have, not too far into the start of the game, but I hasn't really come into play until these last few fights I've had with kind of the mini bosses and this end boss I was doing, because you have to do that, otherwise you can't progress past this, certain parts. But yeah, it's pretty basic, and I'm kind of hoping for the next one for Senua's Saga that they actually kind of expand on that, hopefully, because yeah, like I said, the gameplay it's just light and hard attack, and that's pretty much it. So
there's we've gone through this a few times before, where like the first game in a franchise comes out and it has no skill tree, or it has a very limited one, and then all of a sudden you go to the sequel and there's a skill tree, and that is a bit of a system shock to people. And there's this lengthy discussion about whether or not that's really applicable. Does the design of Hellblade really lend itself to a skill tree, or is that going to be like a shocking IV when people hook themselves up to that game?
Yeah, I think it will be a big shock if they do throw one in there. Just because I think, at least to me, like I said, this game is more about the story than anything else. If they try to, adventurify it, kind of like an Assassin's Creed, like all of a sudden you get all these things, or Skyrim where you got these trees where you can just go wild with whatever you want to do. I think that will be a shock. I probably won't mind too much. I mean, because I've kind of, I'm used to those kind of games, but I think just for like a normal person to pick this up and was like, hey, this is kind of cool. And then they go to the next one. It's like, wait a minute, why can't I get past this part? So, well, you didn't do, your sword play up to level 5 or something like that. So I think it will be a shock if they do that, which I kind of assume they might have to, because if they just throw the same type of game again, I mean, unless they throw in some more text or something, it's going to be pretty basic, to be honest with you. But I'm enjoying it for now, and like I said, I'm hopefully going to finish this soon, so I can get into my next, kind of group of games that I want to play. So, but like I said, I'm enjoying it, and I'm going to see it through.
Do you think a skill tree would be? I mean, do you regard the flow of the story as as a positive additive, meaning like a lot of times when a skill tree is mapped onto something and I feel when I feel like it's bad, it feels bad because it's a bother, because like I'm progressing through the story, I want to get to the next thing, I gotta stop and figure out where to allocate points, and I gotta level up in a thing, and I'm like, I don't want to be bothered with this. It's just logistics. It's just in my way. Do you kind of feel like the flow of the story is such that would be disruptive?
I don't think so, and I don't know if you knew this, but it's Ninja Theory that does this game. So they did like Heavenly Sword and um, Enslaved.
Enslaved.
So
Yep.
yeah. So I think if they put it in there, they'll probably do it the right way. Do it so it's hopefully like gradual too. That's another thing maybe they can try to do. It's not just like, oh, okay, here you go, bam, and you got to do everything all at once. But I think they did a Devil May Cry 2 or something like that.
Yep. DMC.
But compared to those games, and I'm trying to remember if I played Enslaved. I might have did like a demo or something. This is more methodical. It's more of maybe more like a Souls game, I would say. I think just the way the fighting is. A lot of dashes and I think there's some parrying too you can do. I think at a certain point, which I'm just remembering that now. I kind of forgot you could do that, but so I think if they implement it, it's going to be in a good way. And I had another thought and I forgot what I was going to say, but yeah, I think they'll do it right. So I don't think it's going to be cumbersome. And actually, it's kind of weird now that I think about it. I thought what I was going to say now. At one part, there's just a length of a section of the game where it's just talking, and which is fine because, like I said, the story is pretty interesting. So you're doing all this, and even you get back into the it's just cutscenes, and then you get back into the world, and it's still pretty much just kind of talky, kind of you're just exploring stuff, and then they throw you back into some fighting. The voices in your head, I was like, oh, she doesn't remember how to even fight anymore. So they kind of like play off of that, which I thought was kind of cool and kind of within the story. So it's not like like breaking the fourth wall or anything, but I thought that was kind of a cool element too. So yeah, I think it's going to be good though.
Yeah, this got a lot of press a year and a half ago when it came out, almost 2 years ago now, in terms of the kind of the mental health issues that it wrestled with and how it portrayed those in the game. So I remember you talking about this earlier, and I'm glad that it's continued to hook you.
Yeah, I'm just kind of wondering though, because this is like it's supposed to be like Vikings, back in the day Vikings. So I don't know if they're gonna like pull a Assassin's Creed and all of a sudden you're like, at the end you're like in a hospital room, present day, you're just a crazy person. But we'll see. I mean, they kind of, I don't know if they're gonna do that, Joe, just because of how the sequel trailer kind of portrayed everything. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see when I finish it.
And once again, it shows off the power and the value of Game Pass, right?
Yeah, playing it through Game Pass sounds good.
Alrighty, guys, please stay on the mic here. You've got it's not an E2KG show without a little bit of Destiny talk. So what have you been playing in Destiny, and what brought you back to the Xbox version of it versus the fact that you have it on every other platform?
I'm not going to talk too much about Destiny, if you'll let me get away with it. It was comfort food. I was playing Ori and the Will of the Wisps. I hit my 1450 hour point. I was like, am I really going to slog through the next 3 hours of this? And I broke away to play some Destiny 2. I hadn't played it in a while. On the Xbox, it's probably my least played platform. And so, and I'm reloading my Xbox One now for, after moving it back into the studio during that time last year when I had, we thought we were going to sell the house, and so I'd moved everything out. So I loaded up Destiny 2, grabbed the most recent DLC, wanted to go ahead and play it for the last year of its, what is likely the last year of its service life before the Series X comes out. But what I would actually like to spend a little time talking about, just a few seconds, is NHL 20. Is it okay if I go ahead and
please do. Keep
so,
going on your Xbox run.
Once again, probably one of the best sports games released in the last year. And it's a shame that it's happening in May. It maybe only is happening in May because we're stuck at home, and I'm thinking about it. I probably would have just trudged this year so busy that I wouldn't have given it any thought. But, there's a lot of games last year that as we go through the VGAs, and we definitely need to talk about this, provided we get through this okay, as we go through this year, and really take a look at things that are getting snubbed and really look at some of the things that are problematic in the Game Awards. I didn't give it as much thought last year when I saw the racing games kind of clumped into the sports games category and thought maybe that's appropriate, maybe that's giving them some more attention. There's a lot of great sports games that came out last year. There's MLB, there's NHL, there's NBA 2K. Like, there's good sports games. On top of that, there's really great racing games that came out last year when you look at Dirt Rally 2 and F1 2019. So I'm no longer of the mindset that it's like the right thing to do to combine these categories. I think that both of those we used to look at those as two separate genres, and we need to get back to that. Because NHL 20, when you look over the recent history of it, like, it has been a slog on this generation of consoles. It has not done well. Most of the games have been subpar. This is really the first really great NHL game in this generation of consoles. And it's important.
19 did a lot. I mean, I think 20 builds on 19 a lot, but 19 had a couple patches that really kind of broke some of the systems. There was some stick movement stuff that got really janky with some of the patches. Yeah.
So, it has been progressing since the inception of this console generation, and it's arguably hit its culmination with NHL 20, or its high point, and like that's really something that should be talked about. It's really something that should be brought attention to. There was a time where I had multiple instances of the NHL franchise, right? I would have like 4 years worth of like NHL games on different systems, because I would want to keep coming back and playing it. And this is, it's. And I know there's sliders. I know sports games need to be tweaked. I know everybody's different. I hate spending a lot of time with sliders. I love it when I break a game out of the box and it just naturally fits my gameplay style. And this is one that it does, right? I set it on semi-pro. I haven't had to monkey with it a lot. I'm able to allow the CPU to manage like all the team stuff, because the longer the season is, the less interested I am in being the GM. In Madden, when it's, a 16, 18 game season, I'm fine with that. These 82 game seasons, I'm less interested. It overall, I feel like it plays better than the last two iterations of MLB The Show, and I'm much more interested in NHL right now than I am in baseball.
That's some big praise to say it plays better than MLB The Show. So
yeah,
nice.
Yeah, and it really needs to be. So it's great. It's great. I've had a great time with it. I don't know that I'll finish the season.
Me into it. I'm gonna download it. Right, this is a time when the Stanley Cup should have been going on. We should be right in the heat of it all. It just came out last week. It came out to EA Access on Xbox and on PlayStation. So if you have that, it's now free to download. I'm gonna be playing it. I agree with you in terms of the sports games aspects. I was just playing NBA 2K before we got on this podcast. So there's a lot of good sports games out there that don't always get the press that they deserve, because they're just kind of an annualized series. And so to hear that NHL has really hit a good stride at the end here is great. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. And there's for you who likes to, like, I am pretty much the same. Like, I go into every sports game and I always want to play through like the season. Even if I don't finish the season, I just want to play it like it's a real season in the real world. For you who has an interest in like some of these other modes and stuff that this game hasn't. I don't know that they have like baller, like be your own baller or be your own hockey player kind of thing. But they definitely have
the World of Che, though, right? I mean, the World of Che.
Yes, they have the World of Chell challenges, or what Chell, Che. Yeah. Yes, they definitely have that in there, and I hear that it's pretty tight this season. So there should be plenty of there for you to do.
Yeah, nice. Okay, so I'm going to go back to our remake and port discussion from the beginning of the episode, but not spend a lot of time on it because we are running along here. So I spent a little bit of time on both Trials of Mana for the Switch and Final Fantasy VII Remake for PlayStation. So both of these I played via GameFly, and that I played maybe a couple days of each of them, right? Enough to kind of make some quick judgments and to send them back. I have sent them both back at this point. Trials of Mana is the remake of the 16-bit Mana game that never came to the West. It came to the West in the Mana Collection 2 years ago with the Switch, or last year with the Switch, and it has a full kind of remake, re-envisioning within 3D models and voiceovers and all kinds of things. It's on Switch, Steam, and PlayStation. It's pretty. It's very anime looking. It's actually kind of fun. It feels like a big cartoon. But in some ways, the combat is very button mashy, and it was in the original game as well. It's actually better than the original game. Owning the collection, being able to compare them both, it certainly is better combat, but it's also very button mashy, and it's a very slow game. The enemies are not very dense on the screen. You spend a lot of time navigating. You spend a lot of time in dialogue tree, not even dialogue trees, just dialogue windows. So it feels, again, going back to the nostalgia and the comfort food aspect, it is very much comfort food. It feels like a prettied up version of the 16-bit RPG that we would have played back in the day, just like my brawler of Streets of Rage. But because of the slow pace of it, I would much rather go back to Streets of Rage if I'm going to be kind of playing some of my nostalgia feels here. Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Can I ask a quick question? Sorry.
Yeah, please do.
To interrupt you for a minute. So the combat's real time then? It's not turn-based?
Yes, it's real time. It's not turn-based. Nope. And mana combat was always kind of real time as well.
Okay.
It is real time. You can, you have spells and things like that. When you get 3 people in your party, it is only a single player game, but yeah, it's real time combat.
Okay.
So Final Fantasy VII is also kind of real-time combat. You can slow it down a little bit and make some strategic decisions in terms of magic and ability attacks. I've played past where the demo is, and it is a beautiful looking game. Wow, it is very much a remake, and in the vein of, and this has been said plenty of other places. It is not a beat by beat remake. It takes thematically the story. It takes thematically the characters. It gives you some of the same missions, but kind of expands on them. So it's not really just the Trials of Mana remake aspect of just kind of prettying it up and putting it in a new modern engine, but it's kind of reimagining it in that engine as well. It is something that I played for a couple nights and knew that I was okay sending it back because it's a game I'm going to come back to later in the year. It's a game where when it hits kind of that, holiday shopping price point, I'm going to come back and play it, right? It is Sony's prestige game of the season. Every spring they usually have had a prestige game. You've got God of War, you get Horizon Zero Dawn. Last year, Days Gone tried to be that. Didn't really work out so well for Bend Studios, unfortunately. But it is done really well. As somebody who played through all of Crisis Core, Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core on the PSP, it feels very much in that vein, and it scratches that nostalgia itch, even though I don't necessarily have a nostalgia itch for the original PlayStation game. So beautiful, great soundtrack. But again, it's either going to really hook you and you're going to have the headspace, or in my case, I just don't have the headspace to dive into something that deep at this point. Playing a game of a sports game, playing some action games works out great for me. I just don't have that headspace right now. So that's why I was comfortable saying, yep, I'm going to return to it, but now is not the time for me. And maybe it is for somebody else. Speaking of...
2 quick
questions
go ahead. Before you go. Sorry.
Please, fine. No, it's good. Right? I'm trying to speed through these for the sake of time, but I could talk about these all night. So I'm glad.
No, super quick. So this is a full price game, right?
Oh yeah, it's a $60 game. Yes, very much so.
Okay, and I've heard from podcasts too that what pretty much mirrored what you said. Like this is more than just the remake, and this is some almost completely different. Obviously they expanded stuff and they're kind of fleshing out the characters and stuff like that. And then this is episodic, or is this just parts, or because this is like the part 1 of it?
This is part 1 of undisclosed parts. Right. This only takes you up to the end of Midgar. If that means anything to you, congratulations. It is only the first couple hours in the original game. This is a 30-some-hour game,
Okay.
30 to 40-hour game, but it really only takes the scope of the first couple hours, first 3 maybe hours of the original game as well. So things that the first mission of the reactor core that you could do in 15 minutes on the PlayStation 1 version, this is you're 45 minutes into it here, so it does kind of expand that in some ways. And it makes for an enjoyable experience, but yeah, it is not the beat for beat piece. Truthfully, I spoiled myself on what the ending is, and I'm glad for it because I think it's pretty interesting. What they do with it next will be really interesting. So again, like I said, after playing the demo, given that we don't know how many parts this is going to be and how long the story is going to come together in, if somebody waits to have a little more information to come back to pick this up and play it on PlayStation 5, I can't blame them because, it's going to be at least probably 3 years before the next iteration comes out. So thinking about this as a multi-part story that in true Kingdom Hearts fashion is going to take multiple generations and probably end up being more convoluted than it needs to be. If somebody wanted to wait to find out what this actually looks like, it is pretty understandable. So I couldn't get the headspace of a long game, but I want to finish with you, Osiris. You had some headspace of just kind of diving in and having some fun with your family. So talk about Just Dance 2020.
Yes, so continuation from last time. I think I had mentioned it real quick. Playing Just Dance 2020 again. I had gone on sale for like I think $20 at the time, few weeks ago, maybe even a month ago. I don't know. Time's blurring right now. But yeah, just having fun, playing it with my wife, playing with my son. So just having a good time. I think I had mentioned I had gotten the unlimited music. So I got that for about a month and a half because there was like a free month. And then I think I bought like 2 months or something. It was pretty cheap too. So that when you have the unlimited music, it opens up. The difficulty is easy, medium, hard. So there's I think what did I say, like 7 or 8 songs for each difficulty if you just have the normal game, and then there's like a whole bunch now. I don't even know how many. So it's kind of nice that it opens up like that, and we can pick from different songs. So and then different genres too, which is kind of interesting. So that's nice.
Nice. And actually, that's a great segue. This is why I ended with you, because it's a great segue into what our assignment is. Our PickZ PlayZ assignment is some co-op games. It is playing together, right? I've been talking about this throughout the night in terms of, you talked about it, Prime, playing with your family with Master Chief Collection. I played some Streets of Rage. I also have been playing some Mario Maker with my sons, but I'm going to save that for the assignment here. So our assignment here is to do some couch co-op. We all have some families. We also have the ability to do some quote unquote online couch co-op if we can do our meetings through Zoom and WebEx and Microsoft Teams. We can do some couch co-op virtually as well. So our assignment is to dive in and share some gaming experiences with each other, to spend some time in a game that has a co-op feature, even if it isn't necessarily local couch co-op, that it could be online multiplayer as well. So that ability to experience something, to reconnect with people, to have that, like my sons and I did, beating each other up accidentally or sometimes on purpose in Streets of Rage 4, right, is part of that, gameplay experience that we get to enjoy is not just what the developers have crafted for us, but it's what we craft for ourselves as we engage with the game. And so that's what our PickZ PlayZ assignment is to dive in and do some couch co-op, whether that is literally on the couch or virtually. So I know that I'm going to dive back into some Mario Maker. There's been the update a week or two ago with some additional skins and items, and you get the Mario 2 pieces there and the ability to build some worlds. So I should have some more to talk about next time as well. I don't know what you guys are going to play, but I know that I'm going to be curious to hear what you talk about in 2 weeks from now. In 2 weeks, we will be back with our gameplay, our GX show. But next week, stick around. The E2KG network never leaves you hanging. Every week, we are back Next week, we have our deep dive episode, as I said at the top of the show. I was going to say the top of the hour, but we had so much to talk about tonight that we ran a little bit over past our hour point. But thanks for sticking with us, and thanks for contributing in the chat as well. Continue to engage with us over social media. Let us know that we'll be coming back and happy to keep engaged with our community throughout this time and always. Here at E2KG, we always have fun playing with each other, playing with our family, playing with our friends, experiencing new things, and talking about it with each other. So that is what we will continue to do week in and week out. For myself, DBQ Hams, my co-hosts Agasicles Stamus and Osiris Prime, this has been episode 142 of the Enough to Keep Going show. And as always, play what you love who you play with, and enjoy. Good night.
Standing on the battlefield, got my sword, I got my shield, hoping that these homies will turn the cheek to help me feel ready to fight the fight, to live the life of a right, to prove to this road that there ain't no termite. There is no turning back, it's no taking slack, it's no feeling fear. There's a reason why I'm here. Warrior, I'm a kingdom warrior. Euphoria is the title that I'm serving ya. Extraterrestrial, you know me, Mr. Google, Mr. Stookham's hip-hop MC. Finding every track to keep the feel wet. Follow higher ups, take crazy on my sets. Warrior, I'm a kingdom warrior. Warrior, with the power I use. Warrior, blood of God's begotten son. Warrior, yeah, he's the holy one. Warrior, standing on the battlefield. Warrior, got my sword, I got my shield. Warrior, ready to fight the fight of right. Warrior, yeah, that fight starts tonight. Yeah, I'm strong, no I won't back down as I run to higher powers, not run from holy grounds. Cause on God, I do rely as I sound my battle cry, enter the ring so fly. Everyone freed from all hell bounds. The strongholds are up, so these walls will come down. I'm claiming victory with a trumpet so sweet. For 40 days, 40 nights, you hear me? While you contemplating, his homies is skating. Ready to live, to give it up for our savior. Our warrior, total euphoria. Backed right up in the corner like a coward thug. Warrior, I'm a kingdom warrior. Warrior, with the power I use. Warrior, blood of God's begotten son. Warrior, yeah, he's the holy one. Warrior, standing on the battlefield. Warrior, got my sword, I got my shield. Warrior, ready to fight the fight of right. Warrior.